Today we are going to focus on speed and velocity. Okay, so what exactly is speed? Now everybody, I'm assuming, understands the idea of speed, right? If I take this ball and I throw it at you, will you be able to catch it? Okay, here, catch. So I threw it with some speed, right? Did I also throw it with some velocity? Yes. And if I did this in this direction, is the velocity the same? No. The velocity is different, right? So velocity, you know, has both direction and magnitude. We'll come back to this in a minute. But before we get to this, let us define what is, how do we calculate or how do we measure speed and how do we measure velocity. So can we look at these two first? What I would like you to tell me is, what is speed? How do you calculate? Yes? Distance by time. Okay. So let me write this down. I'm not saying this is correct or wrong. I'll just write it down. Okay, what about velocity? Displacement by time. Okay, so let us write both down. So velocity is displacement by time and speed is distance by time. Now these are definitions you probably learnt a couple of years ago, maybe when you were in 6th standard or 7th standard. But let us think a little bit more again about this. Suppose I start off with an object and I tell you that it has a speed of 3 meters per second. Now what does it mean that this object has 3 meters per second? So this is the object, let's say. So first second it will move 3 meters. 2 seconds it's going to move 3 plus 3, 6. Right? So first second, in 1 second it moves 3. In 2 seconds, that's 1 more second it moves 3. And then 1 more second, let's say it moves 3. So it has moved 9 meters in 3 seconds. And it is going to move 12 meters in 4 seconds. And in 10 seconds, 30 meters. In t seconds, 3t. So it's going to move 3t meters in t seconds. Right? This is the meaning of saying that it has a speed of 3 meters per second. So now therefore you may think, if I know that this object has moved 30 meters in 10 seconds, it has moved 3 meters per second. Correct? Are you sure? Let us think now. So suppose an object starts like this and in 1 second moves 29 meters and moves 1 meter in 9 seconds. So this object has moved 30 meters in 10 seconds. So do you think this object was moving at 3 meters per second? When? When was it moving? But this time it was not moving at 3 meters per second. Here it was not moving at 3 meters per second. So when you do distance by time, you are actually not finding speed. What are you finding? Average speed. So speed is not distance by time. Average speed is distance by time. Okay, it's not correct to say speed is distance by time. But if I tell you that speed is 3 meters per second, that means it's already constant. Because if I told you it is 3 meters per second and I didn't tell you when it was 3 meters per second, that means it was 3 meters per second, let us say, for 7 seconds. During these 7 seconds, it was moving at a constant speed. So for 7 seconds, you can say 3 into 7 is 21. That is the distance moved. So this is okay. If it was moving at 3 meters per second, the distance traveled is 3t meters in t seconds. That is okay. But if I tell you that you traveled 3t meters in t seconds, you can't do distance by time and find out the speed, unless you know already that the speed is constant. Okay, so distance by time is not speed, but you can think of it like that. You can say speed is distance by time if you know that it is uniform, if speed is constant. Now this looks little bit like a circular definition. If speed is constant, then it is distance by time. But how do you know what is the speed? So it is a little tricky. So what exactly is speed? Because here we are talking about average speed. So what exactly is speed, which is not average speed? Then what is that speed?
How fast the body moves in a given unit of time. How much distance it takes. How much distance it covers.
Correct. But that's what this is. That is the average speed, right? So suppose I say that an object moves 5 meters in 1 second. Will you say its speed is 5 meters per second? What about the first half? It moved most of this distance. It moved 4.9 in the first half of the second. And in the last half of a second, it moved 0.1 meters. Its speed is not constant, no? Well, that is the meaning of speed. That's what speed says. But what exactly is it?
Distance per unit.
That's again exactly what she was saying, right? That rate is basically means distance that is traveling per unit time. What I want you to understand is 3 meters per second. You can think of it as 3 meters every second, which is correct. But if you move 3 meters in 1 second, it doesn't mean you are moving at 3 meters per second. Actually, it turns out this is a very, very hard idea. What we mean by speed, the word speed means instantaneous speed. So apart from something called average speed, you also have what we call instantaneous speed. That is, at every instant you have a speed. Instantaneous speed. It's a long word. Okay. So what we are going to do is usually drop the word instantaneous. Too long to write. So when we say speed, what do we mean? Instantaneous speed. Always. Speed means instantaneous speed. Velocity means instantaneous velocity. Average speed, you say average speed. If you just say speed, it doesn't mean average speed. It always means instantaneous speed. Nowadays, actually, it's easy to think about instantaneous speed. In fact, you have a very good feel of instantaneous speed because whenever you drive a car or a bike or whatever, you have a speedometer which shows you what is your instantaneous speed at that instant. So the speedometer dial keeps moving, right? If at a particular time it shows 43, so what does it mean? 43 kilometers per hour now. But I started the car and I have been driving only for 5 minutes. I never rode the car for 1 hour. So I never went 43 kilometers. Is that okay? It is per hour, but I have not gone for 1 hour. How does it know I am going to go 43 kilometers?
It basically takes the the distance that you have traveled in that 5 minutes and then multiplies it.
It doesn't even do the 5 minutes. It says right now you are going at 43 kilometers per hour. If you go like this for 1 hour, you will go 43 kilometers. It is not saying what you did in the beginning because maybe the last 5 minutes, for 4 minutes, I was parked at some signal and then I just started moving. So then it's still going to show 43 kilometers per hour, right? And it keeps changing. If you speed up or slow down, it keeps changing. So speed is instantaneous speed. We know today that speedometers are giving us almost like instantaneous speed. It gives a good measure of what is the speed right now. Is that clear? Now we have to be careful with this because that's an instrument, but doesn't mean that that's a definition. For our purposes, right now we can assume whatever the speedometer is showing you is instantaneous speed. But actually the ancient Greeks were the people who spent a lot of time on this. So they would argue a lot about who has more speed, what does speed mean. So everybody knows about this tortoise and hare story, right? Okay. So the question, for example, they had a lot of time because nowadays 6 o'clock and it gets dark, but we have lights and so we are all the time doing things all the way till we sleep. But earlier by 4:35, it generally would get dark. And after it gets dark, that's it. People had nothing much to do. So they would sleep outside, watch the stars, try to talk about things and so on. It's a lot of fun. One of the things that these guys discussed a lot was the idea of speed. So for example, the hare runs much faster, but goes and stops somewhere on the way, sleeps off, the tortoise keeps moving. If the tortoise wins the race, who has more speed? Who has most average speed? Tortoise. But because the tortoise actually has actually completed the race before. So what do we mean by saying speed? So you have to look at 2-3 things. So more speed, first of all, does not mean more distance. because it also matters how long you are traveling with that speed. So with 3 meters per second, if I was going for 20 seconds, and with 10 meters per second, I was going for 1 second, which would have more distance? Because 3 meters per second into 20 means 60 meters. So you're going to go much more distance, depends on the time, not just on the speed. Second, your average speed also depends on what you did on the way. For some time you are at 5 meters per second, sometimes you are at 3 meters per second. You can't say that the average is, first of all, you can't say 5 plus 3 by 2. And you can't also say that the average is the same as the actual speed you had at every instant. So speed is a quantity that depends on time. When do you have the speed?